I'm coming! Just hang on!
What is this? Oh, I don't know. Hello Internet, welcome to Games Done Wrongish. Today we'll be taking a look at the first two games with gold titles for August 2018. The titles are Forza Horizon 2 and Dead Space 3. Let's take a look. Forza Horizon 2, as you may expect with the title, is the second game in the Horizon series. It was, however, the first game to make it into the Xbox One library. The Horizon games are made by Playground Games and not the usual Turn 10 guys that make the Forza Motorsport games, which this spin-off spawned from. Horizon is more like a car racing vacation than a motorsport. In this game you drive around the French countryside meeting up with other racers in set locations to take part in a number of racing events. These events can be races through and even over the countryside or around the small towns and villages in each location. The game is set against a high-octane music track that is played through a special Horizon radio station. This can often help remind you about your current goal or destination. As such, when you set off from one location to another, the radio announcer may come on the radio as you are driving to mention the destination and that the next set of races will be taking part there. You need to get there then in a set amount of time, with the rest of the racers all joining in sort of a fun road trip. As with other Forza games, the game is split up amongst car types and classes. In order to head out to the next set of races, you must own a suitable car for those race types. This is where most of your credits will get spent. If you do not already own that car type or class, you can purchase one with credits. The list of available cars for each class is quite extensive, and once you have decided which you are going to use, you then have to choose how it will look. This is a pretty cool feature in itself. You can choose the colour and decals yourself and then save it and upload it online for other players to use, or you can browse the huge amount of creations already online and pick one of those. I generally choose one that's already been created, as this saves me a lot of time and allows me to get back into the races as soon as possible, which is so much fun I cannot wait to do that. Just like the motorsport games, there are a lot of assists available to you when you are racing. These vary from setting the difficulty of your opponents, toggling brake and steer assist, and using the best line graphic that places green arrows in front of your car which change into amber and red if you are going too fast for the corner you are approaching. I generally turn off steering and brake assist, as this then allows you to brake and outmaneuver your opponents at your will. Keeping these on takes over a bit too much for me, and I do not feel like I am truly racing. I keep the opponent level low and keep the line arrows on so that I know when a tight corner is coming up, and just to make it a bit more fun and enjoyable. If I were to get really into it, I could take off the racing line and I could up the difficulty of the opponents, but then I'd feel like I'm just as crazy as some of the real life street racers. And looking at my past record with them on, I probably would not last very long. On top of the assist mentioned is the rewind feature, which is also available in the motorsport games. This feature allows you to rewind time when playing solo if you made a huge error. For instance, if you overshoot a corner and go hurtling into the crash barriers, allowing multiple cars to overtake you, you can simply hold down Y and the game will start to rewind time for you. You can then choose when to start from, and as you are now prepared for the sharp bend, you can brake hard enough and sail around it with ease. The game has 50 achievements to collect for your standard 1000G. The estimated time to collect all of these is anything from 150 to 200 hours. After that, if you still have any stamina left, you can purchase all of the DLC, which adds another 38 achievements to the game for another 1000G. How long it will take you to do those two though, is anybody's guess. Overall, I really enjoy the Forza games, both Motorsport and Horizon games. There are arguments to be made on both sides for which one is the best, and I guess this depends on your personal preference. For me, luckily, I don't really swing one way or the other when it comes to Forza. I like them both for their own reasons and for their similarities, so with them now finally coming to games with gold and all future games being available on Games Pass, I should be able to play them for a very long time to come, and that I am very happy about. Dead Space 3 happened to be the final outing of the franchise for the developers Visceral Games. It's a sad story really. They were brought into the EA family of games to be used as a sort of cash cow like many studios before them. The lifeblood and soul of the company was drained and they were thrown to the wayside. The way EA treats its acquired studios and IPs is well documented, so I won't troll through it here. I only bring it up because you can see in this game the slippery slope the studio was on. Well, you could if you played this game when it originally released. If you are just picking up now, a bunch of the issues that plagued it back then have been ironed out with a few patches, and it's not as bad as it used to be in this current state. At launch, the game had some very dubious microtransactions that were forced into so-called increased player choice. You could basically buy your way to crafting bigger and better weapons, which in turn would make the game easier. So many argued that they had put a pay-to-win system in a single-player story, which basically means you are just paying to lessen the experience, should you go this way. Nowadays, the crafting is still there, but you can trade with friends, which can actually help a friend get geared up enough to help you in your part of the story. When the game is free via your Games with Gold subscription and is now a few years old, it's not a bad way to play it if you have a friend that does not have time to craft weapons on offer, and you do. You can then craft them for them and you can both progress together. As in most of my Games with Gold overviews, I was playing this solo, so none of this mattered to me. That will change in the second video this month. We are getting Epic Mickey 2, which I will be playing with my son for the overview, so for once I will be able to talk more about the multiplayer aspect of that game. This does not help for this one, I know, but if you did feel like subscribing and coming back for that one, you are more than welcome. My thoughts on Dead Space 3, we got there in the end, are pretty much this. It starts out a little eerie like the previous games in the franchise, but then goes all Call of Duty or Battlefield style crazy. The action ramps up to mimic those games, which themselves often feel like a 1990s Lethal Weapon movie on steroids. This was not the Dead Space I remembered. I will be honest and state I only played a few hours of the first one before I was exhausted and sweating from the amount of jump scares and actual terror with the thought that I was actually fighting for my life. It was that realistic. Think Alien but with more monsters that are zombie-like lurking around every corner. The zombie virus is still present in this game, however it's not the only enemy in the game. Humans are also your enemy, and with this you need to change your weapon to best deal with the foe on screen at that time. Your standard Earth-style guns are very good at headshotting the humans, whereas the zombies tend to require something a little more inventive. Well, not for the series, it's the same plasma cutter you gain in the original game, which is okay, it's always been a decent weapon for this type of enemy. Severing limbs to slow them down and curb stomping them is usually the best way to finish them off. In Dead Space 2 you were quickly advised to rip off parts of the zombie type enemies and use these body parts to puncture them and fight back with them when out of ammo. I did not see any of that in this game. It may return later on if ammo becomes scarce, but in the hour or so that I played I was constantly fully stocked on ammo and medkits. The story starts out with you being told that your ex-wife has been kidnapped by a crazed cult that are also hell-bent on letting loose the zombie virus that you've spent the last two outings preventing. As this would not be a Dead Space game without the virus, their plan succeeds to some extent. They believe they are going to become a higher being once turned, and that is the Promised Land or some nonsense like that. From then on you need to get off Earth and head to the moon, or a moon, I'm not quite sure whether it was our moon or some other moon. You fight the said humans and zombies along the way until you reach a home-based space station next to the moon and are able then to set up command, craft, access your safe storage and so on. From there you try to come up with a plan to eradicate the virus once again. Will the Earth, Moon and perhaps Solar System be taken out in the war? Play the game and find out if it looks like your kind of thing. I stopped here as I would actually prefer to finish the previous games prior to continuing this one. I just don't know if it will ever reach my to-do list at this point though. The game has 50 achievements to collect for your 1000 G. The estimated time to collect them all is around 50 to 60 hours. Overall, the game seems decent enough when all said and done. It's not what I remember from the franchise exactly, but it does still have a decent enough story mixed into a creepy setting with the odd jump scare here and there. I did find it a bit weird that in this game you start out with a kind of telekinetic ability, which allows you to move cars and trains with your mind, it seems. I don't recall that from the previous games, but perhaps it was there in the second game, I just don't recall it, and if I do, I'm pretty sure you had some sort of device that did this thing for you. Again, another reason to play the previous games first, and find out where that came from. It did remind me a little of The Force Unleashed, as in I was never really sure if the item I was moving with my telekinesis was actually going to go in the direction I was pointing. However, with a little fumbling, I generally found my mark. If you have never played any Dead Space game and don't really care for the backstory, starting here will probably be okay. However, if like me you want to know the full backstory before spending hours and hours in this game, then you may be better off starting with the original Dead Space. All three games have their appeal anyway, so it won't be a waste of time. That wraps up this week's Games with Gold overview. If you want to see more of these games, perhaps my reactions while playing Dead Space, or me trying to remember how to play Forza again, then stick around as my full gameplay videos will be on screen next. Also join me again later in the month when we will take a look at the second set of games on offer this month. If you like this video, please consider watching another. 2 suggestions will be on screen now. Also, if you have not subscribed already, please do so by clicking the icon in the middle of this screen. Every view and subscription will go a long way to helping the channel grow, and in turn will result in more content for you. Thank you, and until the next time, goodbye.